Hi, my name is Katie Weatherup and I'm a shamanic practitioner, and one of the things that clients sometimes come to me for help with is entity attachment. And it's this really scary, wacky, weird kind of thing that is kind of complicated to find an effective practitioner because it's not as tangible as hiring a plumber and you can look at the Yelp reviews or get recommendations and then there's a deliverable like, okay, now the toilet flushes properly. And for doing this work, I have a high level of confidence in my ability to deal with whatever's attached to you. I have a really good group of guides that work with me, a lot of really strong protocols. I've been doing shamanic work for 16 years, so I'm a highly experienced practitioner. But the thing that I don't have confidence with is when someone comes to me with entities as their presenting issue, if that's the thing they want me to fix, I don't have confidence for what the outcome of the session will be. One of the things that all my teachers about entities have ever told me, and has been true in my own work, is it's a heck of a lot harder to convince a client that an entity has been removed than it is to remove an entity. And the reason for that is that, there's this weird, wacky, traumatic, kind of scary experience that's happened, and so someone is really activated. And it's kind of like a trauma victim would hear a loud noise and jump and go, oh no, is something there? But the nice thing about something in the physical world is you can identify, oh, the laundry soap just, knocked over by my partner doing laundry, no big deal. Whereas with entities, it's really hard to sort of figure out if it's gone or if it's fixed. And if you've had a long run of suffering with this, and there's a form of damage to the energetic field that tends to happen, a psychic bruising, if you will. And so when you tune into the places in your energy body that you're used to feeling entities, you could still feel the pain and the activation and the experience. And so it can feel like it's still there, and that can legitimately be your experience, even though the entity itself has been cleared. I'm never going to tell someone with entities, well, I won't say never, but in general I don't tell people with entities it's all in your head, because that's just not been my experience. Usually if someone comes to me and says, hey, I have entities, when I go and look shamanically, I'm like, yes, indeed, there were things there that, it's helpful to deal with and it's helpful to clear away. So that part of it is fine, but the other part of it is that humans are very suggestible. And so if I say head lice to somebody without head lice, they may feel the urge to scratch their head immediately. And when you've been dealing with this kind of weird, wacky, this thing at the edge of my perception, it's easy to still feel it for a bunch of reasons. The other, and perhaps the more complicated part of it, is usually if someone's dealing with entity attachment, there's some underlying cause of what makes them vulnerable. So on a physical level, it's a little like having a depleted immune system. So a healthy person can go out in the world, and if they're well rested and their immune system's doing pretty well, the odds of them catching a virus are fairly low. It's not that they couldn't, it's not that it never happens, and sometimes entity attachment happens just wrong place, wrong time. But on average, all things being equal, somebody with a really healthy energy body is pretty impervious to entity attachment. They just, there's just nowhere for them to grab on. And so the core work that I do when I'm addressing somebody who's dealing with entities has to do with that immune system boost. So I do a practice called soul retrieval that gets the person back their energy and strengthens their energetic boundaries, and I get messages from the guides about protocols they can use going forward that will be helpful. So I'm addressing not only the clearing the entities, but also trying to leave them less vulnerable to entities in the future. And the hard thing about that is that some of the things that make people vulnerable to entities aren't something that I can be much help with. So I can help with the health of your soul and your energy body, but if you're dealing with something like being bipolar or some other form of mental illness or really intense, kind of experiences, that's outside the scope of what I can work with. And the trouble is that the untreated bipolar who leaves my office, I could get them all like nice and clear and closed down, but the work doesn't necessarily sustain. They could, get scared and open pathways that I closed up again because I'm not going to be with them 24/7. And they could call in new things that just get attracted to the sort of intense energy that people tend to give off if they're dealing with mental illness. And so what's hard about that is that there really is a piece of the healing that I can be really helpful with, but it may not be what resolves the whole issue. And so the odds of a person coming to me and coming back later and saying, it's still happening, it didn't solve it, are higher with entities than with anything else I work with. And part of it, I think, is people have some unrealistic ideas. So if somebody came to me with a chronically damaged knee and I cleared a past life where that happened, they would still expect to do rehab. They'd just get better results with rehabbing the knee, presumably, although we never really know what the outcome. Before I conclude, I just want to give a couple of recommendations of what can help regardless of whether you work with me or not. So a lot of times, getting some professional intervention with me or someone else who knows how to kind of, take entities by the scruff of the neck and say, hey, you need to be somewhere else, this isn't cool. I like the phrase, compassionate entity removal. So it's just about like helping these beings, in most cases, to be somewhere else. Some of them are rather unpleasant. But regardless, I have a ton of different protocols, and I won't bore you with all the technical details of how I do the shamanic work and all the different approaches that I use depending on what shows up. But for you, one of the things that'll help is strengthening your energetic boundaries. So entities and things feed off of intense emotion. So the more you can self-soothe, and yeah, I know it's scary. It's kind of a catch-22 saying, hey, calm down when you have this really scary thing going on. But the more that you are in your center, the less energy there is to feed off of and the less interested they're going to be in you. If they can't poke you and get a response. And that's not the only thing I'm going to offer. I swear, I know that ignore the boy teasing you on the playground is not advice that most people enjoy. Ignore the bullies is not helpful. But so that's one thing, though, just knowing that, 4-7-8 breathing, where you breathe in for a count of 4, hold for a count of 7, breathe out for a count of 8, time out in nature, things that just calm and nourish you, whatever your protocol is, your care and feeding manual of what helps you feel safe and centered and calm are good things to employ. There's a book by Ted Andrews called Psychic Protection. You hear my kitty cat in the background. Psychic Protection is it's just a really good book, and what I like about it is it just gives you a huge menu of options of ways that you can strengthen those energetic boundaries, because people with strong, healthy, energetic boundaries just are so much less likely to experience these problems. And there are lots of ways your energetic boundaries could get compromised. Some people are just born with weaker energetic boundaries. I certainly was. I was incredibly energetically sensitive. Other people, if they're in a real toxic household, the energy flying around can cause rips and tears. Somebody who's done ayahuasca or LSD could end up sort of cracking through a natural barrier and not having it repaired on the other side when after they've had this visionary experience, could leave themselves with a huge gaping place that's not protected. And like I said, mental illness leaves people much more vulnerable. So there are a lot of different reasons, and the protocols are different, but the nice thing about Psychic Protection is, regardless of where it's coming from, having more tools to protect your home and your space, wards for your house, plus strengthen your energy boundaries, the easier it's going to be to deal with this kind of across the board. So that would be another thought for something that you could work with on your own. The other thing is, the more your life force energy is developed, so Qigong, yoga, Tai Chi, these are all things that really build your life force energy. And part of the way that I work with entities is this idea that if a space is already filled, nothing else can come in. So if you have your own soul parts back, if your life force energy is really full, if your energy field doesn't have rips and tears and gaps in it, even if you're in a really crazy environment, it's really hard for anything to come in. The space is already full. Whereas if you have a hole or an opening or depleted life force energy, it's easier for the boundary to get collapsed and things to get attached. So anyway, in summary, thank you for taking the time to watch this. I really hope that it helps you make a decision about whether I'm a good choice as a practitioner. And I'm sorry if you're going through this. I know it's really scary and weird and wonky, and people tell you it's in your head and it's not, and you know it's not. And I would really love to help you, and I want to be really clear about what I can and can't provide. So if you want me to guarantee an outcome on a session, that's just not something I can offer. You can learn more about me and my work at my website, which is handsoverheart.com.